Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Raw Prospect Podcast. We're finally back doing a NBA Finals recap. 4 games, 5 games into the series. Um, but we're here. We made it. Um, Joining me, as always, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael Ween. What's up?
Back for an NBA Finals recap episode as the NBA season is finally winding down. It's been a fantastic playoffs. I was thinking about it today. Coming into these playoffs, I think it was about as wide open as it's been the past, I don't know, 5-10 years. And the Nuggets are on the brink of winning their first NBA championship, up 3-1 on the Miami Heat. After the Heat actually stole a game in Denver, but Denver came back to win the next two. Game 5 is tomorrow, back in Denver. We're going to talk about the Nuggets, what it would mean for their franchise to win their first NBA championship. We're going to talk about the keys to the series so far and what has swung the series in Denver's favor. We're going to talk about some team building stuff and what we can learn from this Denver run. And we're also going to talk about a little bit about what Miami has done to get to this point and what they can do moving forward, considering that they got to the NBA Finals as an 8 seed. I believe the second 8 seed to do so. So with all that being said, like and subscribe, and let's just kick off the conversation. Let's start by talking about the series itself before we jump to conclusions about Denver winning the championship. What, in your mind, has swung this series in Denver's favor, aside from the obvious?
Well, obviously, the obvious is Jokic and Murray being fantastic. But
Yep.
to me, the glaring difference between what the Celtics do and what the Nuggets do is the Nuggets, when they have guys standing in the corners, they don't stay there. They cut when the time comes. They always cut to the basket, and that's a credit to, for one, their role players having the IQ to do so, and also their scheme, and also their stars being selfless enough to find those teammates and reward them for cutting so they can continue to do so. And their ability to cut well and cut at the right timing has been, I think, a really key factor in them taking huge control of this series. We saw it a lot in particularly the second half of game 4. A lot of the time when Jokic was on the bench, it was a lot of, cutting to the basket, or even in game 3 with Christian Braun cutting to the basket back door. Um, the gravity, we talk about gravity a lot with, Stephen Curry, but Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, their two-man game, I think their gravity, with what they do in that action is so profound. It forces Miami to overload one side of the floor, and it opens up everything on the backside. And for whatever reason, the Celtics didn't have the playmaking chops or the know-how to be able to make those passes, and Denver has just carved up the Miami Heat every single opportunity.
To me, that's where the conversation starts. The role players. I mean, if we exclude Jokic and Murray from the conversation, which is hard to do, but the role players in this series have been integral in what the Nuggets have been able to achieve so far. You think about what Christian Braun was able to do, and I think it was game 3, coming off the bench and not only giving them good minutes, but being efficient in those minutes and just knowing his role. I think that's the thing that I've learned the most from the Nuggets is there is a clear delineation in delegation of the roles. Everybody understands their role. Jokic is the star. Murray is, the Robin to Jokic's Batman. And then there's everyone else, and everyone else has a role. And whether it's been Bruce Brown at certain moments, sparking a fast break and finishing at the rim, getting a key rebound, whether it's been Jeff Green knocking down a key shot or getting a key stop, whether it's been Christian Brown knocking down a three or doing something, cutting to the basket, getting an open layup. The list goes on and on. Contavious Caldwell-Pope knocking down a shot. There is a clear delineation of roles on this Denver team, and everyone understands what they're supposed to be doing at all times. The role players have been absolutely fantastic. And I think you can sort of lump Aaron Gordon into that conversation because what he did in game 4 was outstanding. It was one of the performances of these playoffs, in my opinion. Jokic didn't have his best game. He got in foul trouble. Murray didn't have his best game shooting, at least scoring from the floor after he put up 34 in game 3. And he has caught fire at times in these playoffs. Aaron Gordon, 27 points, 6 assists, and I believe it was 8 rebounds on 15 shots last night, doing whatever he can to help this team when Jokic and Murray were having off nights, and when Michael Porter Jr. really hasn't been all that effective for much of this series. Was huge for the Nuggets last night or the night before, whenever they played. And it seemed like every time his defense has also been key in these playoffs. And every time, the Heat are hunting switches, it's because, Jimmy Butler hunts those switches because Aaron Gordon's defense has been so key in this series. So I think the role players, you can lump Aaron Gordon into that conversation. And then the fact that the Nuggets take care of the basketball. Jamal Murray, even when he hasn't shot well, he's taking care of the basketball, and his assist to turnover ratio is fantastic. And the Heat are one of those teams that if you give them the opportunity, they'll take advantage of it. There was a point in game 4 where Jokic got into foul trouble, and that was one of my big questions for this Nuggets team, because they were plus 12.5 net rating during the regular season with Jokic on the floor, and they were one of the worst offenses with Jokic off the floor, minus 10.5 net rating. That's one of the largest gaps, I think, for any player in the league in terms of plus minus net rating differential when a player's on or off the floor. And this goes back to the role player conversation. Jokic went off the floor once he got that 5th foul for about 5 minutes, and Denver did not flinch at all. I believe they lost maybe 1 point on their lead at that point in time. It's just a team effort, and there's a key delegation and delineation of the roles throughout this team. Everyone understands what they're supposed to do. Michael Malone doesn't really have to do much. And at the end of the day, they're just making the plays that they have to win. They look like a veteran team that's been here before out there playing the Miami Heat, who are probably, if you ask me coming into this series, had the advantage in terms of experience and, from a coaching standpoint. So I think it's role players. I think it's Aaron Gordon in game 4, and I think it's not turning the ball over. Those are things that have really stood out to me so far.
Right. Absolutely. I think you can point to pretty much any championship run over the
Yeah.
past, any time in history, really. And there's always a point in the playoffs where the role players have to step up. And game 4 in the fourth quarter was that moment for the Nuggets. And for them to hold the fort down and play great basketball the way they did and maintain that lead was so huge. And it was extremely impressive as well. It was, so it was a little bit nostalgic for me in a weird way as a Mavericks fan. Um, Seeing a team that was kind of doubted throughout the regular season, kind of playing a Heat team Obviously, not the same thing at all, but it felt a little bit like the game 6 in 2011 when Dirk had the flu and Jason Terry went for 30 points and was just basically like, we're not losing. That's how it felt. Like the role players just looked at Jokic and said, "Hey, we got you. We're not going to let you lose, big fella." And they got it done.
Yeah, to speak more to Aaron Gordon's performance, 27 points, awesome efficiency, 11 for 15 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, effectively guarded Jimmy Butler for most of the game, made it hard when they were switching on those pick and rolls. And the Nuggets outscored the Heat by 29 points when Aaron Gordon was on the floor. So key performance from Aaron Gordon. There was a point in the fourth quarter when Jokic went off the floor that the Heat cut that lead to 5, but a Murray 3 and then I think it was an Aaron Gordon dunk got that lead back up to double digits, and then from there it was all Nuggets as Jokic came back on the floor. But Aaron Gordon, I can't say enough about what he did. And then Christian Braun, seems like every time you look up, someone new for this Nuggets team is making a contribution or doing something different to make a difference for this team. And he was a player I watched a lot at Kansas in college, and I think it just shows the value of what going to college and developing under a coach like Bill Self or Jay Wright, like we see other players in the NBA do, going there for a couple of years and developing into something that can last a long time in the NBA, even if you don't turn into, the proverbial all-star, or, you can make a long career in the NBA, a long successful career in the NBA with the skill set that Christian Braun provides off the bench. So really happy for him. And then Jeff Green, I mean, even with his age, continues to just make winning plays, make a winning effort, be good when he's on the floor. It just seems like this Nuggets team, they know they figured it out finally. And when you figure it out, sometimes it clicks and there's lightning in a bottle. And we can't go this podcast without talking about what I know we have to talk about what this is going to mean to Denver, obviously, because it's their first championship, as long as they close out the series. But I don't think we can go without talking about where does a championship and possibly a finals MVP put Jokic, in your opinion, from a historical standpoint? I know
I
that's
mean, it it's hard to say. It's hard to keep him out of the top 20. I'm gonna be honest. I think there's a real case top 15, but I'm gonna say for now top 20, just because there's just so many great players throughout NBA history, and I don't want to
yeah.
feel like I'm missing any in my head. But man, I mean, people have said it all over the internet. Obviously, it feels kind of obvious to say, but this is going to go on. This is going to keep going on. Obviously, we never know what the future holds, what can happen injury wise. But if there was any player to have the consistency to go through multiple playoff runs, it would be Jokic, because his game is very inducive to, you know, it's very malleable, and he can shift his game to whatever the team needs in that moment, based on the roster construction. We saw it last year in the playoffs as well. He was extremely efficient against Golden State, and I feel like a lot of people didn't give him the credit that he deserved in that series, just because it was such a tough defensive matchup in that case. But he was incredible offensively in that series.
It's incredible what the guy does. You look at him and you don't really understand it. Like, how in the hell is this guy this good? But His basketball IQ is off the charts. It's like, I mean, from a historical standpoint, he's got to have one of the better basketball minds there is on the floor from a floor general standpoint. He can do it all offensively. I mean, game 3, he was dominating from the high post. He can go to work inside and dominate in there too. He can knock down the shot from the perimeter. He can play make. He can make plays off the dribble. And the thing that's really stood out to me in this series from Jokic has been his defense. I think his defense has been a plus for Denver.
Right.
For sure. Making plays at the rim, just doing whatever his team needs him to do.
Lots of deflections.
Lots of deflections, lots of disruption in the paint. It's been impressive to not only dominate offensively like he's done and put up a 30-20-10 performance like it's nothing. And I think that was game 3. And then just continue to dominate on the other side of the floor too. Although it's not, the most pretty thing defensively, he gets the job done. It's incredible. I think at the minimum, if they win the championship and he gets finals MVP, which I fully expect him to, he's a top 25 player all time. I have to go a little deeper and dig a little deeper to say anything beyond that. But at the minimum, he's top 25 all time.
Would you say he's the consensus best player in the league right now? Because I think I would.
Right now, yes. In this moment, right now, yes, he is.
Yeah, I think him and Giannis are going to be the guys moving forward, personally.
Yeah.
One more thing before we move on to the next part is I just want to add one more thing about Aaron Gordon. It felt like every single time he got the ball, he put his head down and drove to the basket. This is going to sound kind of crazy, but it felt almost Giannis-esque in a way, just because it was relentless. It was clearly something that was stressed to him in the scouting report, but he was very disciplined about, whenever a small guy was on them, he never let them off the hook. He went to the front of the rim and sealed every single time. And that's a credit to him, because a lot of guys, I don't want to say the guy I'm thinking of right now, but I'm just gonna say it. Ben Simmons, like a guy on the floor who struggles to shoot the ball in the playoffs. It's very common, but it just goes to show you, like Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, they are proof that you can be on the floor if you know what you're doing.
That's also been one of the bigger debates of this series, has been how to pronounce Christian Brown's name. He says it's Christian Brown. Some say it's Christian Braun. I don't know. I say Christian Brown because it's easier to remember. But regardless, yeah, you're absolutely right. So let's talk about Denver. What does this mean for Denver if they end up winning this championship, which I think they'll close it out in 5 tomorrow? What does it mean for Denver? What does it mean? We already kind of talked about what it means for Jokic, but what does this mean for the city of Denver and the Denver Nuggets as a franchise?
I think, or the hope is the media coverage around Denver moving forward will be different. That's the hope. This past year, it was blatantly obvious, a lot of, national media. There's a lot of games to cover. I get it. They didn't really watch Denver, and I didn't really watch Denver much either. I was, obviously we were in college. We have that excuse. But, I think moving forward here, it will be a new level of respect for that Denver franchise. And I think it's going to be great for the NBA, because the more franchises you can have in that echelon, the better. And hopefully, this can be a blueprint for small market teams moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's huge obviously for any city when a professional sports team wins their first championship. I think it's great for the NBA. What is it now? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's two of the past five, maybe three of the past five championships have been won by international superstars. Um, as you had Giannis and then Jokic. I think the Warriors had a couple in between there, maybe. But regardless, I mean, it's great for the NBA. One less team that's championship-less. I don't know how many other teams have not won a championship, but Denver was one of them coming in, and they're going to get theirs. I think it's good from a team building aspect, which we'll get to in a second. They've shown you that you don't have to go out and get the big money free agent. I think it solidified Jamal Murray and Jokic as one of the better 1-2 punches in the league. Um, Look, they play on the West Coast. Not a whole lot of people watch their games during the regular season. But when it comes to the playoffs, Jamal Murray is one of those guys. He's sort of like Jimmy Butler. He performs in the playoffs, and now we've seen Jokic can sustain it. And I just think they've announced their arrival. Like, this isn't ending anytime soon. They're going to be here to stay in the Western Conference. And with Golden State getting a little older, I know we say that every year, but they are. The uncertainty around Draymond Green's future and, the uncertainty about LeBron in Los Angeles, although I think he'll be back, and some other teams in the Western Conference, the Grizzlies, what's going to happen with Ja Morant's suspension and all that sort of stuff. Denver is here to stay, and they're not going anywhere. So that's really all I think there is to say. Is there anything you want to add?
One thing, before the playoffs, I was hesitant to pick Denver for one reason. It was just because I thought against a team with a 5-out offense, meaning like a center, all 5 players on the floor can shoot the ball. I thought that would be a little bit of a problem with Nikola Jokic and having him, guard in space, having to make closeouts, those types of things. We saw that type of thing affect Joel Embiid as well in the playoffs against the Celtics. And, you know, call it lucky, call it whatever you want. They didn't end up facing a team with that style of offense. So that would be the one lingering thing about Denver that I would point out. Um, but that's really the only thing. There's nothing really to, discredit about this championship. I mean, they did everything they had to do, and they've only lost 4 games this entire playoff run. I mean, it's been incredible.
Yeah. People are going to say they didn't have the toughest, road to the championship. I don't mean to curse on the podcast, but I think all of that's bullshit.
I agree. Yeah.
You can only play who's in front of you, and they've wiped the floor with just about everyone they've played so far.
Yep.
And that's all you can do. They've been dominant at home. They've gone on the road and won games when they needed to, and they've been the best team. And if those teams that were maybe going to be more challenging, they would, they should have taken care of business themselves, but they didn't. So, look, they got some breaks. Almost every championship team gets some breaks along the way, not having to play that team or this player got hurt then and there. But Denver's taking care of business, and they deserve this. So I want to talk about the Heat for the next 5 or 10 minutes. But before I do that, just want to take a break and say that there will be a game 3 in the Texas Stanford Super Regional. There was a lot of talk coming into tonight about Stanford's ace, who they saved for game 2. Luckily, after they lost a heartbreaking game 1, where Texas came back in the 9th inning, their ace threw 156 pitches in a 9-inning complete game with 16 strikeouts. 16 strikeouts. So there will be a game 3 tomorrow at 7 o'clock. And the winner will go to Omaha. The winner of this series will be the only program that can say they've gone to 3 straight College World Series each of the past 3 years. So it should be interesting. But back to basketball. Let's talk about the Miami Heat. Where do we start, man? It seems like every time that we've doubted them in these playoffs, they've proved us wrong, and give credit to them. Where do we start by talking about the Heat? Where do you think they stand going into the offseason, and where should they go moving forward, considering that they have 7 undrafted players on their team, and they've gotten to the finals, what is it, 2 of the past 5 years?
2 of the past 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to really know what the next move is for Miami just because of their cap situation and the fact that I think their pick is actually sent to Oklahoma City this year, if I'm not mistaken. So not a lot of trade assets at the moment. I'm not too sure about Tyler Hero's trade stock at the moment as well. I'm kind of unsure about that. The only hope if you're the Heat is you kind of do what the Nuggets did in a way. You build around the margins a little bit, add a few more wings, a little bit more size and athleticism, and you run it back. I think, Jimmy Butler has shown just get me into the playoffs and we'll have a shot. That's really all it is at this point for Jimmy Butler. And whether the stars align next year and they make another incredible run like they've done this year, it really doesn't matter. It's just more so just getting more athleticism and I don't want to say high level talent because that feels so disgusting to say just because of how condescending it seems, but that's not how I mean it. I'm just saying from a defensive standpoint, you got to have more high level athleticism.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you have the best coach in the league come playoff time, by far. So that's number one. You get to the playoffs with a performer like Jimmy Butler and a coach like Eric Spoelstra, you have a chance. They've proven that no matter who else is on this team, with those two guys, you have a chance. Jimmy Butler's like a coach on the floor. He's a bona fide leader, bona fide proven performer in the playoffs. And Eric Spoelstra will figure it out. Bam Adebayo, I think, will continue to be a key piece on this team. They just need more wing athleticism, in my opinion. They got shooters. Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent are all fine players for different reasons. But I think they need another guy. I don't know where that comes from. But another wing defender and maybe another wing scorer, like a two-way wing would be nice for the Miami Heat. Of course, we're less than 2 weeks from the draft, and we'll have hopefully an NBA draft episode sometime this week. There are a lot of interesting conversations to be had there as we kick off the NBA offseason. But yeah, I mean, for the Heat, just get to the playoffs, man. Like you said, I think you said it perfectly. those two guys are going to give you a chance. And this team has the experience. They just haven't been able to. They've run into. How do I put it? They've run into buzzsaws when they've gotten to the NBA Finals,
Right.
which is unfortunate. But I think they have what it takes to win. They just need a little more.
Right. And another thing I'll say is I could easily see Duncan Robinson averaging 15 points plus next season in the regular season so that they can have a little bit more regular season success.
What does this series look like with Tyler Hero? It's hard to
Um,
say. But does it make any difference for Miami?
I think he adds more scoring pop. There's no question about it. I think um, I didn't watch the Miami Heat a whole ton in the regular season, but from my understanding, they had him on the ball a lot. Running ball screens, handoff actions like they like to run with Bam Adebayo, and I think it would be a lot of that as well. And I think it would just give them another option. It seems like Miami, they run their first action most of the time. It's that dribble handoff game with Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, whoever it may be, and then once that first action fails, it's just kind of swing the ball around and see what happens. That's where Tyler Hero would help. Just a guy who can get the ball late in the shot clock and hit a tough shot.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say what type of impact that would have on the series, but I would give Miami the benefit of the doubt and maybe say they take game 4 and
Yeah.
maybe it's a tied series.
Yeah. I think that's completely fair. To say anything beyond that
Yeah,
would be
that's
tough.
tough.
But I mean, if Denver ends up closing it out tomorrow, which I think they will, but who knows?
Right.
I think it would be fair to say that if Miami had a healthy Tyler Hero, that instead of 5, it maybe goes 6, maybe 7, but definitely 6, I think. But it's hard to say. But that's an interesting conversation. Those questions will never be answered because we'll never know. Let's play a fun game. Over under 2.5 championships won by Jokic in his career.
Oh. Wow. Oh man, this was not on the pre-pod discussion. Okay. Oh, okay. Shoot, man. I want to say over.
I'm saying over. I think
But the new CBA, one thing I'll say is the new CBA lends itself to it more so being a not for long league moving
yeah.
forward,
Mhm.
just because you're not going to be able to keep all these guys.
Yeah, that's true.
Jamal Murray, max deal. Jokic, super max. Porter Jr., max deal. Um, Aaron Gordon making $20 million. Bruce Brown, I think, is on the mid-level exception at $6 million. Has a player option that he'll probably decline and will want more money. Pretty interesting stuff. I think I trust the Denver front office, and I think whoever they bring in to fill out that bench unit, I think Jokic and Murray can do enough to supplement that to make it passable. I don't know if that's the right word. So I say over.
It's hard to say, but I more so look at the landscape in the West. I think there's uncertainty around the Clippers' future and what they have going on there. It's hard to say what the Grizzlies' situation is right now. They're an ultra talented, very young team. The Warriors, look, until they go away, I'm not gonna, speak their demise, but they're getting older, and there's gonna come a point in time where they're no longer, competing at the highest level for championships. I mean, teams go in cycles. You obviously have Luka and Kyrie in Dallas. I mean, you can speak to
Presumably.
presumably. You can speak to that situation. LeBron's, only got so many years left. I just think there's a lot of questions elsewhere in the Western Conference that I think if Denver can capitalize on these next 3 to 5 years of Jokic's prime, maybe even more than that, then they should at least get another, maybe even another after that. I think that's realistic, but who knows? I
Right.
mean,
The
injuries
two
happen.
teams, sorry,
Go
the
ahead.
two teams that I would point to in the West that are on the up and up. Well, it's really one team. I'd say it's one and a half, and it's kind of complicated. The Kings are one.
Okay.
I think De'Aaron Fox showed himself to be a playoff performer for one. His game translates to the playoffs. That's a check mark. And number two, uh, I'm probably going to get roasted for this, but New Orleans roster construction is still so intriguing to me. I just can't I can't let it go. I can't.
I get it.
Um,
I get it.
Troy Murphy is such like a great wing to have, and they have two guys like that. They have Herb Jones too. So it's like, how is that team not good? And
Yep.
then the other team is OKC, but that's still like way too early to say with OKC. So that's like a loosely like I don't know yet kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And we of course forgot Phoenix. I mean, they're going to have Durant and Booker, but there is some uncertainty there right now as it pertains to the future of Chris Paul. But all that off-season conversation is going to be coming, starting with some draft content this upcoming week. It's a really good draft. When you have, I mean, obviously there's supposedly a consensus number one. We know that. But after that, the draft really starts at 2 this year, and there's a real debate that you can have, I think, as to what Charlotte should do at number 2. There's no clear second pick in my opinion. Some people think there is, but I think there's a conversation to be had there. But that and much more coming up on the Raw Prospect podcast. It's U.S. Open week officially now. They're going out to LA Country Club. Emmy's 2 for 2 in picking major championship winners this year. We're going to see if he can
Oh God.
continue that. The pressure is on. The pressure is on.
Oh man. Okay. On that thought with the NBA draft, I'm gonna leave y'all with a little bit of food for thought. Jalen Brown for the second wait. No. I forgot how this was gonna work, but I saw this on Twitter earlier today. And basically, Charlotte would end up with the second and third pick, and LaMelo would end up in Boston for Jalen Brown. And it sounds incredibly stupid, I know, but I thought it was kind of cool. I don't know. Let us know in the comments below if I'm stupid.
All right. It's been a fun episode. Fun episode back. Let's do parting shots and then we'll sign off. Also expect an NFL episode this week. We're getting back into football. It's been over a month since the draft ended and since we last talked NFL. We're getting back into football this week. That's exciting. But parting shots, doesn't necessarily have to be about the finals or basketball. It can be really anything you want it to be.
Parting shot is I went to a watch party for the Champions League final on Saturday, and that game was booty cheeks.
Oh man. Yeah, my parting shot is that the Raw Prospect podcast is back, and we're gonna have consistent content moving
Back
forward.
and better than ever.
And that's gonna do it for this episode of the Raw Prospect podcast. I've lost track of what number episode this is, but we'll figure it out. So just like
Peace out, guys.
just like my chances of knowing what number episode this is, we are going, gone. Peace out.
Peace out.